So up for review today is the 2018 Yeti SB6. The model I rode was the Shimano XT with the Turk frame. The prices on this bike vary depending on if you buy the entry carbon or the Turk carbon, anywhere from $49.99 all the way up to $71.99. The front fork is a Fox Factory 36 with 160 millimeters of travel. The rear shock is also Fox. It's the Performance DPX2. It comes with the Shimano SLX brakes. This is the wheel and hub set that come with it, and the tires as well. And then the handlebars and the stem are both race face. The cranks are also race face, and the rear cassette is a Shimano SLX with the 11/46 tooth.
Oh, a little loose chunky. Oh yeah. Woo. It's a good little trail. Can't go too crazy though, because it's kind of narrow. Get around that. Yes, we are recording. How's it going? How you doing? Make the turn. Come on, baby. Woo! Haha. Get under there. All right. God, this bike is super smooth. Those blind turns, man, slow me down. Woo. Oh yeah, feeling good. Cool little feature. Yep, all right, just me. Woo. Oh, easy now. Got offline. That was my fault, not the bike's. Oh, feels good around that turn. Stay there, you're good. How's it going? Wow, this bike feels amazing. It's just eating up this terrain. It's getting through those corners pretty good too. What's up, man? Going. Whew. Wow, this bike feels really good. Super controllable. Like it felt really good going off those little mini jumps. Really good around the turns. And the suspension was just eating everything up.
Okay, so the bike we're going to review today is the 2018 Yeti SB6. This is an enduro bike. Has 160 mil travel up front, 152 or 153 millimeters of travel in the rear. It's 6 inches. This is probably one of my top 3 favorite enduro bikes that I've ridden so far. And I've ridden almost a dozen. So we're going to talk a little bit about the company. We're going to talk about the warranty, price range. I'm going to go over the initial feel of the bike, how it felt, how it feels. This is a demo, so I only had the bike for about an hour and a half. But initial feel, how I felt climbing on the bike, and also how I felt going downhill on the bike. We're going to talk some of the geometry, some of the specs, prices, things like that as well. Remember, if you like these videos, to give me a thumbs up, and also if you could subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe, remember to click that bell icon so that you get notified of any of my newer videos coming out. Okay, so Yeti as a company is based in the United States. They are based out of Golden, Colorado. They do all of their testing and development there at their headquarters. As far as I can tell, a little bit of research I did, it seems like their bikes are built in Taiwan, or at least the parts are built in Taiwan, and then they ship the parts here, and then they put the bikes together here at their headquarters. Which is typical for almost every bike manufacturer out there. Very few places actually build in-house and ship out of the U.S. The warranty for the bike. Now, the bike I rode was a 2018, and the warranty that they previously had for 2018 models and earlier than that was a 5-year warranty, or 2 years depending on when you bought the bike. Like if it was a brand new bike, but you bought like a 2016, they're not going to and you bought it in 2018, they're not going to do it for 5 more years. Probably because carbon is carbon and it starts to deteriorate. So, but for the 2019 bikes, everything, every model, every whatever carbon frame or Turk frame that they have for the 2019s is lifetime warranty, which is amazing. But at the same time, I mean, how long, if you're going to spend this much money on a mountain bike, how long do you plan on keeping it anyways? Are you going to have it for more than a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years at the most, even 5? After 5 years, I mean, your bike's going to look like a dinosaur, and you're probably going to sell it anyway. So, I mean, who really needs a warranty to be lifetime? Very few people are actually going to keep a bike and ride it a lot for their lifetime. I mean, you're buying these upper end bikes. It's probably A, because you're trying to become professional, or B, you just ride a lot. And I mean, other than the frame, everything's going to wear out on the bike. The rims are going to wear out, the drivetrain's going to wear out, the fork, the suspension, all that stuff. I mean, yes, you can keep the frame, and the frame is going to get nicks and chips and stuff like that, but I mean, it's cool that they switched to a lifetime warranty, but I don't really think that it's necessary. Anyways, so the price range. Now, Yeti has 2 types of carbon frames. They don't have aluminum frames. They have their basic carbon, and then they have their Turk series. It's TURQ. That's like their upper end carbon frames. So the price range for the carbon series on the 2018 models. If you want the XT group set, that's the XT drivetrain and brakes, that's going to run you $49.99. Now, if you want to bump up to the GX, which is going to have the GX drivetrain, the SRAM GX drivetrain, the 12-speed everybody loves, I think that's going to cost you $5,399. That's for the carbon prices. Now, once you move up to the Turk, the prices get a little bit more expensive. The Turk, obviously, it's higher end. It's a higher end frame, so they're not going to bother putting an XT group set on it or a GX. They're going to go straight to the X01, and the X01 price is $7,199. I think there's also an XX1 version of this bike, but I couldn't find the pricing of that because now all the 2019 models have come out. None of the 2018 stuff is on their website, but I'm sure, with the new frames coming out, you can probably find these bikes, for sale, if you can find the right size frame that you need, for anywhere from $500 to $1,000 cheaper, which is really nice. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the initial feel of the bike. How, when you first sit down on this bike, it's like, do you sit on it and rainbows and unicorns come flying out of your head, or do you sit on it and you hear a bunch of creaks and cracks and it just doesn't feel right? I mean, there's that initial, like, you don't know, there's that initial excitement the first time you sit down on a bike, and hopefully you sit down on the right size, because the right size frame, because that can make a huge difference. I'm a taller person. I'm 6'2". I'm 230 pounds. I'm a pretty big guy. So for me, if I'm not on an XL frame, the bike already feels cramped. It doesn't matter if it's a downhill, if it's a cross country, or all mountain, however you want to classify it. If it's not at least their XL frame, I'm already starting to feel cramped. On this bike, I got on the extra large frame, and this was a Turk model, so it was the higher quality carbon. It also had carbon rims on it as well, but it did have the XT group set, which was kind of a bummer, but we'll get back into that later. So when I first sat down on the bike, it felt really good. The head tube angle felt good. The seat tube angle felt good. The bike was comfortable. It's long. It's slack. You know, it's an enduro bike, and I like enduro bikes. Okay, so the reach on this bike is, I'm looking at my notes, 465 millimeters, and the wheelbase is 1,242 millimeters. Now that's a little bit shorter. It's about 10 millimeters in both the reach and the wheelbase than I'm used to on my Rain, but I didn't feel cramped. They both have 800 mil wide bars, so that's apples to apples for what I'm used to. But it didn't feel cramped at all. I felt like I had plenty of room. Like I said, it was comfortable. The bike is long enough and slack enough that it felt really good when I first got on the bike. And also with the wheels at a 27.5, I mean, you can't beat it. I mean, you know, I'm not a 29-inch wheel snob, but I like 27.5s. Okay, so now we're going to talk about climbing. And climbing for an enduro bike is usually just garbage. You know, there's several enduro bikes out there that aren't really made for climbing. You know, the suspension, the bike is too slack, or the suspension is too soft. You know, like if you have like on the Giant Rain, the upper end model has a coil in the rear, and coil shocks are great for low bump sensitivity and taking big hits on jumps, but they're just, you know, unless it has a lockout, they're just garbage for climbing. And on the Yeti bikes, what they've done to combat this is they have a switch infinity system. It's a little shock thing that goes right in behind the cranks here, and it's amazing. I can't even tell you, I can't even describe how amazing this bike climbs. The head tube angle is 65.5 degrees, and the seat tube angle is 73.5. So that's a half degree less slack in the head tube and a half degree more vertical in the seat tube that I'm used to on my Rain. So it's a half degree less slack, but the seat tube is a half degree straighter up. Now, the seat tube angle is where your pedaling comes in. Obviously, the steeper the seat tube angle, the easier it is to climb. I'm trying to make sure I said that right. So the more vertical the seat tube is, closer to 90 degrees, it's going to put your body higher up and more in line with where the crank center line is. And that's going to make it easier to pedal, which is why, you know, cross-country bikes or whatever, they're like 76, 78 degrees or whatever. And enduro bikes are, you know, all the way down to 71, 72, 73, somewhere in that range. This bike is at 73.5. And I know I've said that a bunch of times. I'm going back through my notes here. With that switch infinity system, it takes out all of the bob that you normally have. Like when you're climbing a hill on an enduro bike, like say for instance, when I'm climbing a hill on my Rain, that rear shock, I have to lock it out. Otherwise, I am just bouncing up and down just from the pedal stroke. Not like even on a flat ground, even going up like a service road or something, the back end is bouncing. Not a lot, but enough to where it's gonna, you know, you're gonna use more energy than you need to. Whereas on the Yeti SB6, I went up this hill, and you can see in the video some of the hills that I climbed. I had the rear shock wide open, the front shock wide open, and with that switch infinity system, it takes out all of that rear end bob as you're really, you know, cranking through the pedals, going up at slow speed. When you're going up the hill, you don't feel any of that bounce. I don't know if the bounce is if it keeps the bounce from not happening, or if it absorbs the bounce in a certain way that you don't feel it and it doesn't transfer to your pedal stroke. However it does it, it's magic, and unicorns and rainbows just come flying out of this bike. It's really, it's, until you've ridden one, it's hard to describe. The bounce is not there, and it was amazing. Like, I got to the top of the trail and I'm like, oh God, I forgot. I couldn't remember if I had switched out the shock or if I had locked out the rear shock or not. And it was wide open the whole way. I couldn't believe it. I thought I had locked it out, and it was just amazing. Okay, so I want to talk about the drivetrain that came on this bike. It was the XT group set. Now, the rear derailleur, I believe it was an 11 speed. I want to say it was the 11 to 42 tooth rear cassette. I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, a 42 tooth is not enough gearing for me to get up hills. I'm, like I said, I'm 230 pounds, and I need that 50 tooth. I need the SRAM Eagle 50 tooth to get up most of the hills around where I live. But my biggest problem with it was the XT shifter. The shifter is under so much cable tension that when you're using the thumb part of the shifter to get to your slower gears, it's really hard to push. Like, I had to push it. It seemed like, I mean, just really hard, and it was hard to use. That's just simple. The simplest way I can say it. It was not easy to use. You had to push it so hard that it takes your thought process away from what you're doing, and you're like, oh my God, I have to push this shifter with like all my might. Whereas, a GX shifter, I mean, you're just cranking, 3 gears at a time with little to no effort at all. So XT shifter, not great. But anyways, Switch Infinity, awesome. It's amazing. It's any bike, any enduro bike that you can go uphill with the rear shock wide open and you don't feel the bob of the bike, of the rear shock, is amazing. And it pedaled great, and there's not a whole lot more I could say about it. Now we're to the point of going downhill. Now, obviously this is an enduro bike. It's made to go downhill. That's the main purpose of this bike. That's like, what it's built for. And with the higher, I don't know if it was the higher quality carbon. It also had carbon ribs on it. This bike was phenomenal going downhill. It felt so good. I mean, I fit into the bike well. The suspension, the Fox suspension, it has a Fox performance on the front, the Fox 36 performance on the front, the Fox DPX2 in the rear, which is actually my favorite rear shock. It has the little extra, boost valve on it. It was just amazing. It felt, now the trail I went down wasn't a normal trail I ride around here. This is up, obviously where they had the demo, and it wasn't a super crazy trail. It was basically just like a bunch of switchbacks with some long, little kind of small rock garden stuff. There was a couple of rutted sections where I kind of pushed it as hard as I could through all of that stuff. But even still, in those tight turns, it felt so good. It was smooth and it was stable, and it's hard to describe. I mean, I'm trying to, obviously, but the bike felt like, through a lot of those turns, I felt like I was on rails. I didn't feel like, I wasn't worried about the front tires sliding out or the rear tires sliding out, or I was going to be in the wrong wrong body position, which most of the time I am, because, I'm garbage. But anyways, it felt really good. It just felt stable, and I didn't have to think about where I was on the bike or what I was doing or my weight. I just did it. The less you think about something in that kind of situation, the better you're just gonna flow through it. And this bike just flowed through all of the turns and the little tiny jumps that I did, a couple of rock sections I went over, and it felt amazing. So, final thoughts on the 2018 Yeti SB6. I love this bike. If it's probably, like I said, my top 3. If someone offered me this bike and I had to give them my rein, oh man, it would be hard. I would probably give up my reign for that bike. You know, just here, trade me this, trade me that, and I think it's not so much that I don't like my reign, but I like the suspension. I like the Fox suspension on this bike over the suspension on my bike, and also the Switch Infinity system they have on the Yeti bikes is just it it's not even like, you can't even compare apples to apples, because it makes the bike feel so much different and so much more in control and so much smoother, like going over small stuff, and it's better climbing. I mean, this Yeti SB6 climbs like a goat, and my reign, it climbs. I can climb with it. It doesn't climb like a goat, but the Yeti SB6 climbs like a goat, and it was an amazing bike to ride. Like I said, if it'd probably come out, it's definitely top three, and it would probably be above my reign, which is really hard for me to say right now. But it's a great bike. The only downer I have to say about Yeti and their bikes and everything is that they don't offer an aluminum frame. If they offered aluminum frames, and you can get, you know, say for instance, you know, this bike starts at like the less expensive of the carbon frames, it starts at about $5,000. That's a lot of money. Whereas if, you know, for like a giant reign, you can get a giant reign, the aluminum version, for, I want to say, about half of that. I want to say it's like $2,800. If Yeti were to do that, if they were to make an aluminum frame and with all of the same features, just an aluminum frame, so you could chop, you know, $2,000 off that price. I mean, even still at 3,000, I think you'd be even more popular with, you know, the normal people like myself, that can't go drop, you know, 5 to 10 grand on a mountain bike. I think that would really blow them up as well. But, you know, to each his own, and they don't feel the need to do that. So that's my only downer on this bike at all. Everything else, as long as you don't put an XT group set on it, this bike it's going to be one of your favorites. It's one of my favorites. And if you have the chance, go to the Yeti website, find their demo tour, and test ride these bikes. And the 2019s are supposed to be even better with the Switch Infinity system. So try it out. I guarantee that you'll love this bike. Thanks for watching my video. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a like down below. Something else you can do to help me out would be to share, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you like what you've seen here today. Please click on one of these boxes up in the corners here. One will take you to my rides playlist. The other one will take you to a recent video. And always, you can click on the logo in the center, the Urban Outdoorsman SoCal logo, to subscribe. Thanks a lot.